Welcome to Preps Plus Podcast, episode 51. I'm Josh Hart, sports editor here at the Daily News. I'm here with Jason Leskiw, Preps reporter. It's been a while since we've been on. I think it was before football playoffs started was episode 50. So we're happy to be back on. We'll break down a little bit, just touch on football just slightly before we get into basketball season and give you some teams to watch and storylines to watch this year. For the winter season. So we'll start with the one thing we wanted to talk about in football was our all-area football player of the year selection.
Yes.
A lot of people asked us about it, and so we kind of wanted to break down exactly how we decided. It was a conversation between Jason and myself, for weeks we had kind of thought this is going to be an interesting debate.
Yeah.
Because there was three really, really good candidates, right? You have last year's Player of the Year winner, Joey Tripp out of Rainier, who put up just monster numbers, 3,100 yards, 50 touchdowns, led his team to a state championship, 100 tackles, just an insane year. Very, very indicative of why we selected him last year,
right.
And pretty much did it all and better. Then there was Kalama's Alex Dyer, also led his team to a state championship, 3,100 yards, 49 touchdowns, which were actually identical to his season stats from the year before, and he did it in 1.5 less games because he was out with a neck injury for a game and a half. So he obviously had a monster year. He really took that next step, 75% passing, all that good stuff. Then there's Tyler Flanagan, who put up an insane number, 1,900 rushing yards, 2,000 passing yards, 2,100 passing yards, something like that. 50 touchdowns or so, or I think it ended up being like 42 touchdowns or 44, I think.
Well, yeah, but then, with some kick returns.
Right. So, all three put up similar stats. Tyler obviously did it in 4 less games or 3 less games than Joey Tripp. And so they all had monster seasons. Tyler broke the school rushing record of his own dad, which is a cool story. And so we were left with this interesting decision. Yeah. Jason, what were your first thoughts when we sat down to kind of have that debate?
My first thought was, well, it's got to be Flanagan. I think if you remember, I was coming back from the east side, got back at like 11:30 at night when we first discussed it, and so, well, it's got to be Flanagan. I mean, what he did was just absolutely incredible, and I stepped back and look at it, and I think for me, what sealed when I decided on Dyer, what sealed it was you put him in Woodland's offense, what happens? You put him in Rainier's offense, what happens? And same thing with the other two candidates, and I mean, it was still, it's still kind of obviously a non-scientific thought process, but just what he was able to do with maybe the same system this year, but a fairly different group of guys, to me was, just says a lot about it, not only his growth, but just what he can do in multiple offenses, multiple groups, and so that was what did it for me.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I think it was week 10. I was talking with a fellow reporter, and I said, they had asked, is Flanagan going to be your player of the year? And this was just before the playoffs started, I think. And I said, yeah, unless Dyer or Tripp win state titles. Yeah. Well, then they both go win state titles. So it made the decision real hard. And I think a lot of that, my decision came down to that in a big part is obviously state titles aren't going to rely exclusively on one person. But to win a state title in the fashion that Tripp and Dyer both did, by really absolutely just carrying that team, at both those teams, was impressive. And they were both really applauded for their leadership in doing so as well. And so when you have character guys like that are also super influential, that win state titles, it's really hard for me to go against that.
Right. And that's not to say that Flanagan is
that. Correct. But yeah, once they won that state title, I think I would have gone with Flanagan if they both lose in that state title game, and I might have gone with Flanagan if Flanagan wins his district game.
Right.
So there's kind of a lot of things there that are happening, especially since Flanagan probably puts up another 350 yards the following week against whoever he plays. So his stats even look a little bit healthier. But it was one of the hardest. I've been a reporter in some capacity at a newspaper for like 6 or 7 years now. This was the hardest one, I think, for me to choose. I've never seen 3 candidates so qualified to do so.
Yeah.
And I think what helped after the fact really think we made the right choice was Dyer then gets All-State Player of the Year. So I think the Columbian on their podcast broke down exactly how that is decided, how All-State is decided, but journalists around the state nominate players and then other journalists around the state vote on those players. So that's the simple version of that. And that confirmation of what Dyer was able to do. And obviously there's different classifications there, but Dyer was just extremely impressive to me this year because he didn't have the same supporting cast last year. Last year, his yards and touchdowns, he could throw it up to Tucker Wetmore or Jacob Hurst. Yeah. They're going to make something happen, right? No, he had a good supporting cast this year, athletic. But he was the one that got them out in the summer and said, hey, you guys need to get to the gym. He was the one that said, hey, you guys need to perfect your routes. Hey, you guys need to work with me on the timing of this thing. And that's what led Kalama to a state title, was Dyer really emphasizing the details of we need to do this in order to get there. And Kalama, remember, Kalama wasn't the favorite going into this year.
No.
There was a lot of questions around this team, and Dyer was the guy who glued everything together.
Yeah. No, I mean, what he was able to do. And I was one of the people who thought, okay, well, you lose that much talent. You know, you have guys like Wetmore and Hers, you know, and then you lose them. It's going to hit. Somehow he duplicate what he did. So, yeah, no, yeah. And to kind of cap off my part of that is just a good season to both Flanagan and Tripp. I mean, 3 guys who were all very deserving.
Right, and in any other year, they probably would have won.
Yes.
And this was a year I thought about having Co. Right. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. There's usually a right answer, in my opinion. And if there was only 2 of these guys, there might have been Co. But there's 3 of these guys that are all deserving, and so that's what made me say, we got to pick one of them, because we can't have 3 of them there. So, I mean, they're all great, and I like what you said about if you put each of them in each other's offenses, and each of those offenses is uniquely designed for those people, right?
Right.
Like, you know, Dyer is not going to be able to do the diesel. You know, Tripp is not going to be able to run Kalama's offense. Right. You know, Woodland's offense is uniquely designed for Tyler Flanagan. Right. But I think you take Dyer and put him in any one of those teams, and I think he gets the edge for being most adaptable.
Right. Definitely.
Because I really think he has this unique quality, not that the others don't, but this unique quality to make other people look really, really good.
Yes. And elevate, and he does make them elevate their game.
Right. So that's kind of the decision. I know we've had some questions on it, so we wanted to take our first podcast of the winter season to explain that. But it was really an excellent football season. I went into the year thinking, yeah, we might have some extra time to work on basketball, Mac.
No.
Yeah, no, we did not. We had 2 state title games, and so it was a lot of fun. It was a really, really fun football season that we weren't quite expecting. So we'll see if our teams are able to bring it next year too. I'd like to go back to a state championship game. So So we'll see how that goes. As far as this winter season, there's many storylines to watch. The first one we've been following early this winter is Bacchus's trek. Mark Moore's coach Bill Bacchus's trek to 600 wins. He's sitting at 599 now. Has been for a few days. And he's trying to become only 6th boys basketball coach in state history to win his 600th, right? Well, for those who don't know, Bacchus is serving a 4-game suspension right now following the Kelso game in which he received a double technical. Jason, explain what happened, and when he's going to be back.
Well, what happened in the game, there was I guess some calls he didn't like, and he actually received a second technical following a foul. It was called to give Mark Morris shots, ironically enough, so ref teed him up. Second technical, you're automatically DQ'd, and according to multiple sources, he what got him the 4-game, that would be a 1-game loss. What got him the 4-game suspension is, according to multiple sources, there was a confrontation with officials after the game that by rule should not take place, and there's a new policy that WIA is implementing this year, as far as if there's verbally or physically abusive action towards an officials, especially after a game, and frankly especially after a coach is DQ'd or a player too, that's virtually automatic. It's something they look at, but it's pretty certain that's going to be an automatic 4-game suspension, and that's what happened here.
Yeah, and so he'll be back December 28th in Yakima. They're playing Ellensburg that day. That's when he's again eligible to try for his 600th. So it'll be a month.
Yep.
His last one came on November 29th. He'll play December 28th. So it'll be a month between games. Trying to get it, if he wins that day, it'll be a month between his 599 and his 600th. And if he loses that, the schedule doesn't get any easier because they play at Columbia River and then at Woodland. So, I know he's wanted this. He had a few goes at it. He had the Timberline game, Skyview game, Kelso game, and now he kind of has to sit on it. So probably a very frustrating time for him.
I would think.
But them's the rules.
That's correct.
So. That's kind of the storyline we've been following early this year. It's a big one. He's been a great coach, 27 years at Morris, and 37 total. Is that right? 36 total? 36, I think.
36, yeah. And I mean, over the last month, I've talked to a lot of people, about his impact on their lives, on what they've seen, how they've seen him impact other people's lives, and
Yeah, he's a good coach. Mm-hmm. So so that'll be we've had a story ready to go for when he gets his 600. So like you said, a lot of people wanted to comment on his success over the years. So that's the early season storyline. What are some other interesting teams or storylines to watch for you as the winter season here progresses?
The number one thing that fascinates me is Kelso. How far will Kelso go is basically the big question I have.
The boys.
The boys, correct, yeah. And I mean, they go up to state, and really their slate will never be easy. It's just, probably.
You're telling me Rainier Beach isn't a walkover?
O'Day, and they did really well. I mean, the Kelso teams in general last year did really, really well across the board. And, this year, Shaw Anderson, his senior season, he showed a lot of growth last year. So pretty much all season, I've been excited to see what he's able to do. Statistically, it's more or less the same, but you see in the details of his game, you really see improvement, and I really can't wait to see how that finishes.
Right, and what's interesting for Kelso is that they just don't have as much depth this year. I think they're as talented up front. Their first 5-6 guys are as talented. Maybe they'll have a little bit of growing pains as they kind of get some experience.
Right.
But I think their depth is a little bit less this year, particularly in the post, where you have the loss of John Bowlby and Reese Tack, who were so long and could defend outside and inside. And what that allowed last year was Shaw Anderson didn't have to guard the other team's best post player.
Right.
And he was able to relax a little bit on defense and then be able to attack on offense. Well, this year you're having to see Shaw Anderson really take his defensive game to that next level. And the big thing Kelso's found out early on is he can't get into foul trouble. They just don't have the depth in the post to handle that. And so Kinch has really talked about Shaw being a real smart player. and how he is able to avoid that foul trouble so that he can do what he does best, which is score the basketball.
Yeah, and I think you started to see already. I mean, there's 7 games in or something like that, and you start to see the other guys figuring out, okay, this is where I can contribute, and I'm going to work towards this, and this is, so it's a really good sign for them to you're about a quarter of the way in, and you got these guys figuring out what their roles can be and executing.
Right, and I'm surprised with how well they've done defensively. I mean, you saw it in the Morris game. They can be real dominant defensively because they got some real bouncy players. They're a little bit bouncier this year, a little bit smaller, but a little bit bouncier. You got Josh Webb and Dylan Davis and Jaden Hardman that just are real athletic and can jump and move. Right. So defensively, I've been really impressed with them. And then the coaching staff's always going to have the guys in tip-top shape. So once they get into that, they already have a 2-game lead over Prairie.
What, you tell me Joe has guys run lines? What?
But they already have a 2-game lead over Prairie in league, so they're looking like pretty good favorites right now to win that league championship. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle that bye district with Lincoln and Timberline and all those good teams up there. So I think that's going to be a fun season for them. For me, the Wahkiakum girls are going to be fascinating this year. This is a team, they were so deep going into tryouts that Rob Garrett only handed out 7 varsity jerseys, and you say, what? Yeah, because all the other girls were good enough to make varsity, but he's holding them accountable by saying, hey, each night you have to turn in your varsity jersey.
Right.
And, if you work hard in practice and if you're doing the little things that we demand of our players, you get a varsity jersey that next night. And he's the AD, so he updates the roster online, the varsity roster. So that's a really interesting team to watch. Macy Elliott and Ellie Lights have continued to progress. Then you have Paige Mace and Charlie Ash and Flukiger. They can shoot, they can play defense, they're going to swarm you. And what's interesting about Rob Garrett coach teams, they always can dribble the ball. Every single player that touches the court can dribble the ball well. And there's a lot of really good 2B girls teams on the east side. On the west side, they're not going to get much competition. Maybe outside of Iwako, Acosta, Toledo, maybe. But they're looking like this might be the year that they can finally raise a gold ball.
Possibly. I know Rob Garrett's taking not taking that approach with saying, hey, we got to prove it. And I asked him about a week ago, hey, what's this looking like? What's the state 2B look like? And his response was, well, there's six teams, that have a good shot.
Right.
And that's, so it'll be a fun tournament.
Yeah, I really think, and you saw last year, Iwako was number 1 throughout the whole season, and then they get to state, and there's some good teams over there. So,
yeah.
Heck, the Tri-Cities Prep, the Von Olhoffen girl, single-handedly beat a team if she's hot. So, it's going to be interesting. It's intriguing to me because Peyton Souvenir, after her last game with Wahkiakum a couple of years ago at the state tournament, told me in 2 years this team's going to win a state title. And I kind of shook it off. I get it, you believe in them, but with the amount of talent that she had leaving, it's just amazing how they've regrouped. And even last year, you saw them really hit their stride toward the season end. So Rob Garrett's done a really good job with that team. Are there interesting teams for you that you're watching?
The Toledo girls will be interesting. They're a team that I think can do some really good things with some growth. They obviously have a couple really good players, and I think to that end, it's up to the rest of the team to really try and elevate their game. And that's the one that immediately comes to mind. Iwako is interesting.
The girls,
certainly interesting.
The boys are interesting too, but the Iwako girls, how well they've coped with the losses. I'm shocked at how much depth they have when you graduate those 3.
I know.
And I'm like, oh man, we've been missing this all along because of how good those 3 were.
Yeah.
Erica Glenn, you can see her confidence growing with every night, and she's really going to be a special player by her senior year.
And in our Basketball Magazine. Go ahead and pick that up. There's some really good stuff in there regarding Ilwaco and kind of the pressure that came with that much talent, and kind of the fact that they're still really confident and more relaxed now that they're playing a little bit different kind of basketball, I guess you could say.
Right, for sure. And they still have that 1-3-1 little trapping press that they run, and they're able to get a lot of points out of transition. What's going to be interesting to me is how the 2B boys basketball district shapes out.
Yeah.
There are 12 teams, and I'm not kidding you, there's 12 teams that I feel like are deserving of a state spot. There's only, I think, 6 or 7 spots to go around.
6,
It's going to be tough.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no dominant team,
Right.
but there are a lot of good ones. And it starts in the Central 2B, as always, when you have Toledo, Adna, and Toutle Lake at the top. But it doesn't get any... You also have some good teams in Kalama, in Winlock. On the Pacific side, you have some. Willapa Valley's looked awesome to start the year. Northwest Christian, Ilwaco, Life Christian had a recent transfer get eligibility. So you have, I count 4 really good teams in the Pacific. Yeah, I think the Central's got to go at least 6 deep. I could make arguments for 8 teams.
And there's this kid, what's his name? Brock Rivet? Is that Brock Rivet?
Oh yeah, on the east side. Yeah. Once you get Brock Rivet of Kittitas, and guess what? They've already lost to St. George's this year, who took them to the wire in the state playoffs last year, and they have a really good team. I believe Eric Farias is still there. Brewster's got a solid team.
Yeah.
The 2B boys in this state is absolutely loaded right now, and it starts here in District 4 with 12 really, really good teams.
And I thought the district tournament last year was good.
Right. I can't wait for this year's district tournament.
Yeah.
Because it is going to be a dogfight every night. And as we saw last year, anybody can win on any given night. So it's going to be fun. And I like that there's no dominant team. If you told me Willapa Valley wins it, I believe you. If you told me Adna or Toutle or Toledo, any of those teams, I mean, there's a lot of really, really good B basketball, and anyway, all the old timers that make the trek every year to state B basketball. This might be one of the better years over there, because there is a lot of fun players to watch. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the Mark Morris boys. They're an interesting team this year. But we say that a lot. It seems like I say that every year, is that they seem to graduate some guys and then they come back and win a league title anyway. Yeah. Columbia River's mighty tough this year. Does Mark Morris have it in them to win another league title?
So tough. Well, about this time last year, I'm thinking, these guys don't look that good. I mean, they didn't look bad, but they didn't look like a league title team. And I think when we talk about, we talked about the impact Backness can have on a team. That's where you really see it, is you start here, but then you finish way over here. And so can't count them out. But I think this year they got quite a bit of work to do. I'd really have to look, and I don't even know if the GSHL site has anything in their records where Mark Morris has gone a month without, or 3.5 weeks without a win.
Yeah. What's interesting to me about that team right now, where are they getting points from? Because Dawson Fritz is awesome, like defensively, offensively, of distributing the ball, and he's had to take on a bit of a bigger scoring load. And getting to the rim, and he's massively improved at getting to the rim and finding his holes. Yeah. But he can't be your leading scorer. No. So, and that's no slight to Dawson Fritz. There's very few guys that stand 5'10" or 6 foot that can lead you every night in scoring. And you look at
play a post.
Right.
5'11" playing the post, basically.
Yeah, I've seen him drop down there a couple times to defend bigger guys, and he's just such a warrior. He'll do whatever's asked of him. He can also draw a charge. Best draw and charge guy I've ever seen. Yeah. But Reese Gibb, he's a shooter. I think he's got to continue to grow, and Rary Sommer's got to stay out of foul trouble, right? I mean, early this season, because offensively his game is so well honed. Like I've seen very few posts that can do the things he does offensively, but defensively, man, he cannot. He's got to stay out of that foul trouble.
Hard to make an impact when you're only playing 10 minutes.
Right, and so it'll be interesting to see how he grows when Backus is teaching him all the disciplined stuff of how to defend, and who knows, he could be. I could honestly see him as one of the best players in the area by season's end, but he's got to stay on the court.
Right.
So they're kind of an enigma early on because I don't know what to make of them. Yeah. Against Fort Vancouver, they look pretty decent, and then Skyview they look good early, and then the scoring seems to have fallen off the table.
Yeah, it's funny because I think the worst game that I've seen him play over the last 3 years was at Columbia River last year. It was just a weird game in general. Columbia River was off. There was a lot of whistles being blown, and that makes it difficult. But against Kelso, it was weird because defensively, especially in the first half, they played a really, really good defensive game. It was tremendous. And in the second half, it just, I'm not sure what happened, but something, or something didn't happen, I guess you'd say, and that was it. Right. So
yeah, I mean, Backus can do a lot with those guys that may not be the most athletic player on the court, but are going to listen to him and be disciplined in what they do.
Right.
But that only can go so far.
Right.
Across town, the Ari Long girls are a super interesting team to watch this year, and they're looking like a certain playoff team. Easton Reeves is super fun to watch, but her supporting cast has really improved this year.
Right. No, that's one thing. I mean, last year it was the game plan was triple team Easton and you win the game,
right,
kind of thing. And they had some girls who clearly had potential and just needed time, and now they've got that time. And so, no, they should be a good team. And Jan Karnowski's a very good coach, and he's proven that over a very long career. So, where they end up in February, I can't wait to see it.
Right, and they're just fun to watch too, because teams have to press, because if you let Easton have the ball in a half court set, she'll probably find a way either to score herself or work out for a teammate for an easy layup.
Right.
So they have to press to get the ball out of Reeves' hands, which makes it nice, fast-paced games, and their bigs, Randall and Bobby Clark, run the court really well. They're real long. They look like just like gazelles running the court out there, and Reeves delivers some just awesome passes to them.
Yeah.
I mean, like against that Hawkinson game, there was one, I think Reeves is dribbling with her left hand, and one hand throws it through the lane to Clark, and easy layup. Like she's matured so much since I saw her as a freshman. As just, I want to get everybody involved. I don't have to do all this myself, and really grown in that role. And
I mean, it says a lot when you got a girl who's 5'2" and
hey, 5'3", man.
Oh, all right. And gets that size and gets offers. It doesn't really happen ever.
Yeah.
So that says a lot.
Yeah, she's warrior. So. They're an interesting team. And then the last team I want to mention is the Nacelle boys. They're pretty widely lauded as a top 5 team in the state, particularly with Tacoma Baptist guy going over to Life Christian. So that helps them a lot at the 2B level. And Jason loves Life Christian. The University of Life Christian. But you've been listening to Tim Harrell too much.
I wouldn't Harrell.
But Colby Glenn is out. I want to say he injured his ACL or something. Anyway, he's out with an injury, but they still have so many pieces, so many weapons. They got Jacob Eaton out there, 6'5" guy. They got Corey Gregory. They got Antonio Nolan. I mean, they're so deep, and they won their first state game since '95 last year, and I think they're going to make a real deep run this year.
Right.
I'm a little sad for Colby Glenn because he is such a baller. I mean. Kid as a freshman, another undersized guy, but just had a great sense of basketball.
Right, and I think you see the athleticism. You saw the athleticism during football season, and they're just
So they're going to be due for a good year, I think. So I think basketball last year was insane. I think we had like 9 trophy teams, and last year was just a crazy high note for local basketball. I think this year has a good chance to follow that up. I really do. There's a lot of really good teams in the area, and so it'll be a fun January for us. It's been a fun December as we put out the basketball magazine. So check that basketball magazine out. It has tons of information in it. It's out in Sunday's paper. Shaw, Anderson, Eastern Reeves on the cover, doing a little old school NBA photo with, kind of replicating the Muggsy Bogues Minute Bowl photo. So that was kind of fun to shoot, and
it's a pretty good picture. It's fun to look at.
So check that one out and follow us on Twitter and all that good stuff. And tdmpreps.com is the place to go to find all of our prep sporting news. And we will see you after the holidays.
Happy holidays. Save some leftovers for me.